I don't know if it's this class or not, but I was going to make a suggestion today, if you're able to make it happen. Um, I'm going to find it almost impossible not to reference two films all semester long. So if you could find a way to watch them, that'd be great. Because you'll understand a lot more of the references that way. But um, Marriage Story on Netflix, just about every single story we have in this class it's about love or strong relationships, it's going to apply to in some way. Like I'll find some way to reference it. Rose Firmly, I could do it with. Yellow Wallpaper, I could do it with. Story of an Hour, I could do it with. Even that wasn't one that was assigned. Um, Bonus, if anybody's known somebody, why it's not enough to have known somebody. Have you ever been through a divorce before? Whether from the child's side or the parent's side? I went through on the parent's side. It's not a lot of fun. I don't recommend it. Try to marry somebody you know you're going to be with forever. That's my suggestion. Don't get caught up in the ads and the movies that only show you an hour and a half of two people's lives, and it's only the best parts. And you think, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to pretend like that's what's happening and then marry somebody. At least I figured out on day 2 of the honeymoon that it was a bad decision. So I didn't have to go through like a year and a half, 3 years of like pure, wonderful love.
So how long were you married?
A year and a half. Long enough to have a child. It's fun. But the divorce lawyer scenes in the movie, the most accurate depictions of family law lawyers I've ever seen in a movie ever. And everything that the cutthroat lawyers are saying is absolutely right. It's hilarious. The cutthroat lawyer is like, what was it he says? Like the line he says in the trailer, he says, if you start at a place that's reasonable and they start a place that's crazy, then if y'all meet in the middle, you still end up somewhere between reasonable and crazy. And the guy's like intense when he's saying all this stuff. He's like, he sounds nuts and like he sounds mean. And everything he says, I was like, that's exactly right. Use him. And the guy's like, he just sounds too intense. I'm not going to go with that guy. And I was like, wrong decision. He was the right man. And then there's another lawyer that reminds me of another lawyer I met, and he was accurate to that guy too. And I was like, man, this movie really knows lawyers. And the funny thing about the movie is it's divorced lawyers, right, who deal with child custody and stuff. And like in the movie, they're like, why can't we just talk this out? And they have a scene where they try to talk it out, and you see exactly why. If people were capable of talking out divorce and not having to go through lawyers, we wouldn't have lawyers. They wouldn't make so much money. People act like they're blood-sucking lawyers. It's supply and demand, guys. They charge that much because people need them, because they can't talk. That's why they're getting a divorce. If you could talk, you wouldn't be divorcing. That's the problem. So it's a great movie. It's great to talk about. And it has a lot. There's actually a lot of very subtly sexist stuff in there, too. A lot of people who've watched the movie will come away thinking one or the other is like the bad guy. And the movie's saying this person's the bad guy. I watch it and I go, I think it's an equal, like it's saying like the bad guy is the inability to communicate itself, like it's the concept that that's the antagonist. But some people watch it and feel like, oh no, the mom is awful, or no, the dad is bad. And I kind of see more of like a spot in the middle. But interestingly, I think your views on other things affect how you see the movie, which is it's a very polarizing movie from what I've seen. The other movie is one you're not likely going to be able to see soon or at all, and you're not going to watch it because you're lazy. I'm sorry. I have certain opinions on things. It's a South Korean film. You have to watch in subtitles. A lot of you just went, oh, yeah, he was right. Called Parasite. Has anybody heard of it? And it's getting a lot of Oscar buzz and stuff, but it's very, very good. And every single story that we have in this class where I could talk about class differences, the rich and the poor, which is basically, if I'm not talking about sexism or racism, I'm talking about the rich and the poor on these stories that have been picked out. Because almost those 4 things cover just about everything in the class. Really, honestly, I think they do. Like I was kind of saying that as a joke, but I think that's about all the stuff. There's some that are different, but yeah, it's a lot of what's wrong with society. That's like most of what's wrong with society. Those things. Um, yeah, that story just really gets class differences and how frustrating it is, and how sometimes class difference has nothing to do with laziness, just the inability to find work. Like, you want to work, just nobody will let you do it for any amount of money that would actually help you. But yeah, it's very interesting. So those two movies I'm going to have trouble not referencing. Now, people have done surveys. We've had a lot of surveys. That's probably going to be enough. Maybe the rest of the people are very nicely saying, well, I didn't read either of the stories, so I don't want to sway the results. It looks like, oh, okay. It was very weird because like it did the donut different than I saw the other time. The other time I saw the donut from the other students, like Rose Firmly was on the left. For some reason it's on the right this time. I'm a little confused. But it's still about the breakdown from before. However, people were a lot less interested in Yellow Wallpaper in this class than in the other class. Oh, I know, it's longer. Rose Firmly's shorter. That makes sense. Rose Firmly was so good. What you're saying is, I only read Rose Firmly. And I liked it. No, it's actually it's pretty good. So we'll talk about Rose Firmly, I guess, primarily, and then we'll maybe hit Yellow Wallpaper and Barn Burning equally later. Okay, guys, Rose Firmly, go. No?
This never works.
Sometimes it works. It worked last time. Well, sort of. Somebody nervously said something, and then it turned into an actual discussion. It was very interesting. But it happened on Yellow Wallpaper, not Rose Firmly. So yeah, Rose Firmly. I guess I could ask a question that I always like to ask when we first start talking about Rose Firmly, which is, did you see that coming?
No.
Not at all?
No.
You saw it coming? Exactly what was happening coming?
No.
No. Okay.
Not exactly. That's what I suspected.
You suspected foul play? Like bad stuff?
Yeah.
I did not. And I originally read this story in 1302, not 1302, it's 1302 now, but when it was A&M Commerce, it was English 201. I read this story, and I got to basically took it at face value, and then got to the arsenic part and went, that's weird. And they said, she's going to kill herself. And I went, oh, yeah, probably. Poor thing.
Well, whenever the shopkeep said 4 rats only, I felt like that was foreshadowing towards something else. Like, I felt like that was kind of a way of calling her husband a rat in a way. Like,
See, that's clever. I'm not that clever. That's brilliant what you came up with, yeah. When she said for rats, I thought she was just saying something to throw off the scent of the fact that she was going to kill herself. And then there was the actual scent of the thing that I thought that she had killed. I was like, oh, legit rats? Weird. But okay. She's just weird. A little bit of an overkill. Arsenic for rats. I was like, I mean, they didn't have spray nozzles back then. She wasn't just, spraying. Isn't arsenic what they used to make the green in wallpaper back in the day? Was that the chemical? There's some like really poisonous chemical that's capable of making very beautiful greens in terms of dye.
That was a form of uranium that they used for the green dye.
Now that's the glow-in-the-dark dye.
Yeah, but they also used it in glass work and different colorations and stuff. You can still buy it, like the glass that's dyed with the uranium and stuff is green.
I know that there was some kind of poisonous chemical that wasn't uranium that was used in a lot of green dyes and houses in like a long time ago, and they were like it was almost like an emerald green like you would see in like Wizard of Oz, but very deep. I don't know why I'm sticking on this. It's not very relevant. But arsenic, rats. Yeah, I did not. I thought literal rats. When the smell came, I went, oh, legit rats. Because what would make that much of a smell around the house? She's not dead. And I just kind of went on. And I got into the story, and it was like, there's a dead body in the bed, and apparently she laid next to it. And I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I had to go back and read the whole damn thing, and I was like, I chose. I was a lazy student too. I chose the story because it was the shortest, and I go back and read it over again. I was like, damn it! I remember being pissed. I was like, I'm not gonna. It's like I'm lazy, but it's like at the same time, I'm not gonna sit there and not lazy. It's just I want to be efficient. It wasn't laziness so much as efficiency. I was like, I'm gonna read the shortest one because I want to be able to talk in class because it was almost all discussion-based grade. It was like 20% was based on whether you talked in class. Can you imagine? Such a nightmare for introverts. Gosh. Kids going, me, I was sitting there going, yeah, I got some stuff to say because I read one. But it just was efficient, and then I got pissed. I didn't understand things. I don't like not understanding something or being tricked. I was like, ah. And so I read it again, and I had to.
I feel like a roast movie is something you have to read a second time, because when you're reading it the first time, you see this end, like he said, foreshadowing, and you see it, but you don't. It's not in the way you expect it to be.
Yeah, I thought it was foreshadowing for her death.
The ending hits, and it's like, what? Wait, hold on.
Because she's all sad and stuff. I thought that was what it was going to be foreshadowing for. Oh, I will caution you all when reading this story not to concentrate too much on the Homer being gay. I'm sure y'all saw that in like the Spark Notes or something, or somewhere where you looked up stuff and it said Homer might be gay. And you're just like, aha! But you don't really realize anything from it.
No, it states it in the story that he likes men and hanging out with the younger boys.
See, I always took that differently. Like, I mean, I just don't take it the same way. Like, what 497 is what the story was. It makes me sound really smart to know that, but the last class, they told me that number. Where was it? It says it. Let's see. For rats and such, it says wheeled buggy, Grierson, noblesse oblige. As soon as the old people said, where is it? Smelling so bad, smell went away. Where is the bit about Homer? Where is it? Got HB on each piece. We're all disappointed when there was going off. Where was the company of men bit? Oh, yeah. So next day we all said she will kill herself. It's so funny. And we said it would be the best thing. It's so terrible. When she had first begun to be seen with Homer Barron, we had said she will marry him. Then we said she will persuade him yet. Because Homer himself had remarked, well, he liked men, and it was known that he drank with the younger men in the Elks Club, that he was not a marrying man. See, I always took that differently. There's all this talk online about him being gay, but I think that sort of sidesteps the main issue of the story, which was, does she kill him because she finds out he's a homosexual? I don't think so. Like, that doesn't seem to me like the reason she kills him. But otherwise, why would she lie next to him all those years? Like, she laid next to his dead body in a bed. She can't feel like it's some sort of odd conversion therapy. Like, she killed the gay out of him. It doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, now he's lovable because he's dead and the gay's gone. Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. To me,
she wanted something so bad, so ferociously, and she ends up marrying him, and well, finds out after that, he is not the marrying type.
yeah.
And so to save face and all that, she decides to go ahead and kill him. And in essence, she holds on to the initial thought that she had that, he was a normal man or heterosexual, and, it could go that way as well. I
mean, it could had that happened. I mean, but since it did not, I mean, I don't like to think about what ifs in stories because, I mean, I feel like well, sometimes it depends on the. Sometimes I'll think about what ifs in stories, but it depends on the situation. Like in this case, the events are definitely laid out where there was no marrying. You could tell she bought him stuff, so maybe that they all thought, hey, she's gonna marry him. She's got him like the HB on each piece of like men's toilet set in silver, so I mean, it's expensive. So she obviously put some thought into like marrying this guy, but he's not the marrying type. And I've always just read this differently, where I think I don't know if everybody's known a guy like this, but I've known a few guys like this, where, and I don't even know if y'all are young enough to have gone to bars much yet, but or old enough to have gone to bars much yet, young enough, where it seems like there's often like college age kids, but for some reason, like I don't know, like country towns and stuff, there's often the old dude that kind of hangs out with the young guys at like the bar, and he just hangs around them, and he's like, I think something in his head makes him think that he's like this respected dude, and he's like the dad to these kids almost, where he like helps them, you know, it helps bring them up and teach them the ways of men. But he can't really be held down because if he was married, he could have to stop like drinking or staying out late or looking at every single girl he sees, and that doesn't sound appealing to him. Like he doesn't want to become a respectable dude. He wants to talk to these young kids playing darts and drinking beer and tell them how the world is. Like that's what makes him feel important. And Homer sounds a little more dapper than that, but I mean he does go to like the Elks Club, and it says he liked men. It was known that he drank with the younger men in the Elks Club. A dude that drinks with younger guys to look cool. We got that in spades, like around here. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, it happens in Texas a lot. And so when it says, because Homer himself had remarked he liked men, and it was known that he drank with the younger men in the Elks Club, that he was not a marrying man. There's a lot of people who don't want to marry, who aren't necessarily gay just because they don't want to marry. And so I feel like, to me, if you concentrate on the fact that Homer might be gay, and he very well might be, I read it differently than some people do, where they think he's gay. I think that concentrating on that and saying that's the issue it's a throwaway line in the story. It doesn't even take up a huge portion. What does take up a huge portion is Emily, and I feel like people concentrate so much on this one little line about whether Homer is gay and that's why she killed him, that I feel like it sidesteps the real issue, is that she's lonely. She's lonely. There's a guy that she thought she was going to be able to marry, and she can't. And now he's dead. And she killed him. With arsenic. So, we shouldn't ask for a gun. So shouldn't approach him, shoot him. Arsenic's a sneaky killer. You toss that in something when somebody's not... she tricked him into death. She wasn't like, lay back. She gave him, said, well, how about some tea before you go? Or, I've got some nice whiskey I never open. Oh, I'd like some nice whiskey. Drink, dead. She's bound to have like a bar of some sort that she doesn't drink from because she's too much of a fuddy-duddy to drink. I can see her being like that. But the main issue to me is that I would caution you not to concentrate too heavily on your mind on like the homosexuality bit, because I noticed that a lot of times people will concentrate on that like that's the only thing we're supposed to pay attention to in the story, when I think it's sort of a side issue. And I hate too when I go online and I look at the scholarly research on this, how many articles seem to want to focus on that, when I feel like it's not really, it's sort of like acting like that's the only aspect of a person's character, when there's so much more to people. But people concentrate on weird things all the time. So, Rose Frimley, I got tricked by it. Lonely lady. What else? People who weren't tricked by it, like what made you? I mean, I guess you only get one chance to read a story for the first time. So I don't know if it's even worth asking like what somebody did to not be tricked. versus what somebody did to be tricked. Like I think honestly I got lucky when I watched Force Awakens the first time, Star Wars: The Force Awakens. I saw on like the opening crawl it said General Leia Organa or something like that, and I went, Leia Organa, so Han Solo and her aren't married? And I went, oh, and I leaned over to my wife and I went, I bet that boy with the lightsaber who's really bad is the son of Han Solo and Leia Organa. She's like, what? I said, yeah, because they're not together, so it's going to be a child of divorce, so he's going to be really angry. She goes, and then like 20 minutes later, or like an hour later, it was like, ah! So spoilers for Force Awakens if you haven't seen it in 6 years. Or was it 4 years ago? I don't remember. It was something. 5 years. An acceptable amount of time that I'm not responsible for spoilers anymore. Unlike Rise of Skywalker, which, I mean, it wouldn't matter if I spoiled Rise of Skywalker because it sucked anyway. Mandalorian, though. It's good stuff. Also, Joker sucked.
No, it didn't.
Fight me. Joker was a bad movie, which I'll talk about after class, but not during. I disagree with the Academy, which I do frequently. So, Rose Frimley, speaking of Joker, not the bad story, but it's a good story. But beyond just the reveal and like the story tricking you, what else was like redeeming about this story? What makes this story last? Because it's not just the trick that makes the story last. Twist endings don't make stories last forever. There's got to be something there for it to continue on and have it be interesting. Why do you think we still read this story?
Because we're bored.
No. I'm not the only one who assigns it, by the way. A lot of people assign this story. It appears in a number of different textbook anthologies. It's almost always in an intro to lit course. Emily's Rose. Oh, wait. A Rose Frimley. Got the title wrong for that. Here's a clue. What's her last name? Yes. I've always pronounced it Grierson. Grierson, you said? Interesting. I don't know why I said that. Actually, that has no relevancy at all to whether or not we still read it. I just was curious if you knew her last name. I do have a question for you guys. What was it? Somebody brought up something in the other class about how maybe she did kill him because he's gay because it says she never went upstairs for all those years after. But I told him, I said, well, no, you can't trust that statement. And there's a reason we can't necessarily trust almost anything we hear in the story. Did y'all? Is this a first person narrator or a third person narrator?
Third person.
Third. Let's read the opening of the story. When Miss Emily Grierson died, our whole town, first person. As soon as you have any word that comes up that involves the teller of a story in the story itself, it immediately becomes first person. So when he says our town, that has to be first person. Because he's saying me, the group of people who is us in the town. So it's first person. But when I first read the story, I thought it was third person. Because it has that feel. It feels like an outside entity telling us about Emily. And it is, but it's an outside entity who has a character whose name we don't know, who's a member of the town. So the whole story is essentially based on the idea kind of gossip. Like it's a gossip talking about this old debutante in town, part of an old family. And like a lot of the things that we hear from the people in the town. I mean, have y'all ever heard like gossip here in Texas that it turned out wasn't actually true. Happens a lot, doesn't it? And so what we have here is the person who's telling us the story is themselves a gossiper. So we have to take everything that we see here with a grain of salt. Shoot, even Homer's possible homosexuality, even the thing that said, well, we know that he's not the marrying type. You don't know why she like this is just some dude in the town whose name he won't even reveal. This isn't like he's on Facebook saying, hi, my name is this, and here are my opinions about this person. He's got a username. Rose Frimley Narrator 115. Homer was gay. 42069. Some stupid, username, and he's like telling us the story. But it's very important to understand the whole time that we're in this class that whoever's telling us the story, especially for the first-person narrator, may not be a reliable narrator. Just like in real life, it's really weird how when we hear stories, we want to think of the narrator as somebody who's telling us an accurate version of events. Otherwise, why would we listen to the story? But like at the same time, we have a first-person narrator here who's sensationalizing the things that he's heard, and it might not be as. I mean, it's just the same problem we have with news media today. What was it? I saw some article one time that what was it? It said I hated it too. It was like the article said, I should say this now so that it's easier to say it now than to say it later. I don't like Trump as a human being. I think he's a bad person. But there was an article that came out one time, and it said Trump, God, what was it? It said Trump claims he deserved. What's the highest civilian honor you can get? The Medal of Honor? Is that it?
No.
What is it?
No. Congressional Medal of Freedom, I think.
It wasn't that one. It was something it was something below that. It wasn't a Purple Heart. It was something that was it was a military honor specifically, but it wasn't the Congressional Medal of Freedom. Is it is the Medal of Honor an honor you can get in the military?
The only one you can get in the military that truly matters if you're going to get a convict, all other ones are crap. So.
Is the Medal of Honor?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And it's something that only military people can get, not civilians, right? Oh, okay, good. That's the one I'm talking about. So the Medal of Honor, I believe, was the one that it says Trump claims he deserves Medal of Honor despite having never served in the military. And I was like, really? I was like, that sounds weird even for Trump. And he says a lot of weird stuff. Or tweets it more specifically. When he does the actual speeches, he sounds fine. And when he does rallies, he sounds like a nice dude. But in the video, when I watched the video, Trump, he says, this guy's name, and I can't remember the guy's name. He says, where is he? Where is he? Right there. Great man. Great man. He says, I wanted the Congressional Medal of Honor. I wanted one. And everybody's giggling, and he says, they told me I don't qualify. I wanted it. But no, you good man. And so he obviously told a joke. It was very obviously a joke. And yet the article title says, Trump claims he deserves medal he didn't actually even serve. And I was like, he was making a joke. People make jokes. So to me, inaccuracy is I'm as much as I don't like Trump, I'm not going to sit here and jump on this hate train just when it's inaccurate. I don't appreciate that.
I mean, actually, it's gonna happen, that kind of situation, because of the fact that people don't know how to take jokes down anymore.
Well, not only that, but people see something that's an affirmation of what they want to think, and they won't even check it.
Confirmation bias.
Yeah, confirmation bias. Yeah, and it's worse in the internet days because it's so easy to see a headline. And the news, they know that if you see a title that you like, you'll share it without reading it, and then they hope that enough people share it, then more people will end up reading it actually. Because if you read it and went, oh, that's not really what I thought it was going to be, but they know people won't read. It's hard to read.
They
It takes seconds out of the day. You've got so many things you have to do. But I consider the inaccuracy to be a huge problem. However, in stories, I think it's very interesting that we can have inaccuracies and those be an element of the storytelling itself. And it's relevant to today, too, because we have that happening everywhere. We have people being inaccurate, but nonetheless, that's just how people are. There are motivations, there's overlooking things, and I think in this particular case, we don't really know whether he's overlooking or being truthful or being entirely untruthful or just embellishing to interest us or any manner of things involved in his storytelling. I find that interesting. What did you guys find interesting? I mean, 71% of you said, "Hey, let's do this." Was the interesting one, but did I even hit the interesting stuff yet? Have I said anything about what you found interesting? What have you found interesting? Is there anything I haven't mentioned yet? What about yes?
I think it was interesting she didn't recognize her father's death for like several days, and like they called her and it was like, "Your father's dead," and she wouldn't recognize that. And I think there's a similar symbolism with the death of Homer as well, because she couldn't recognize that he was dead. In fact, so a very sick mind, perhaps.
And that was one of the. Is that something you caught on the second time reading, or did you catch that the first time through? See, I didn't catch that the first time through. When I read through the second time, I noticed, oh yeah, that delusion that she has with her dad shows not only that she might have a similar delusion with Homer, and like I can just kill him and lay next to him, and that's a relationship, which is weird. But also shows that she might not be able to let go, and so that's why, for me, she gets rid of Homer. So it's a brilliant decision by the writer to add that foreshadowing in there. That nonetheless, if you're not looking forward or thinking, you're just like, oh, poor lady. You don't really think like she's capable of murder based on that. But yeah, it was a very interesting thing to catch. I wish I'd caught it the first time. This story always makes me feel like an idiot when I talk about it, because I remember the first time I read it and how bad I was at catching this stuff. And I read through the second time, I was like, was I even paying attention the first time?
What was interesting wasn't exactly certain specific parts in the story. It was how it was told. As you said, it was told by a gossiper. So basically, it was being seen from someone's point of view that wasn't in the situation personally. So all you're getting is these, I guess, diluted remarks, like you said, inaccurate. Things.
Well, I don't necessarily know that the narrator is inaccurate. We just don't know if he is or isn't inaccurate. It's sort of like a Schrodinger's cat situation. Is this the second time in class I've mentioned Schrodinger's cat? Sorry about that. But the cat, there's a cat. Have y'all heard of the Schrodinger's cat thing? I mean, you've heard of it, but do we know like the specifics of it? It's meant to explain a quantum concept where like when you it's I don't remember, it's like something like a photon if you shoot it at like a reflective object. I think that when it hits, it goes in both directions at once. Like when it hits and it scatters, it goes in both directions at once. It's literally duplicated and goes in two directions. But when you observe it with instruments, it only appears to have gone in one or the other. There's no way you can observe what the math shows actually is true. It did in both places at once, not just one. So Schrodinger came up with this concept. I think it came up from that concept of a cat that is in a box with a vial of poison that will open up at a random time. And so because the vial of poison opens up randomly, the cat in the box, anytime you think about it when the box is closed, is both alive and dead. It's only by opening the box that you know whether or not the cat in the box actually is alive or dead when it's confirmed. But while it's in there, you have to imagine it's both. Not that it could be either, but that it is currently both. And so I think it's kind of the same with the narrator here, where we don't know if he is or isn't being truthful. So we kind of have to imagine that there's a possibility that he is being truthful and that he's not being truthful at the same time. Is it this narrator is both telling us exactly what's going on and is both not in various ways and through various parts of the story. It's not really a way of knowing, so we have to say it is both at the same time. every time we find evidence to that case, though. And I do think that what you say about the other part that is true. This story lasts because of the telling, not necessarily the revelations that we get about it, but the way in which it's told. I had another story I used to assign called an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. Have you ever had to read that before in school? No. Ambrose Bierce wrote it, but it's kind of a Civil War story where there's a dude, he's being hung at the beginning of the story. They're hey, you're about to be hung. He's gonna be hung from this bridge. Then it goes back in the past and it tells this bit about a Civil War, like a soldier from the South in the Civil War comes and visits his family, and he says, he's like, how's it going, man? Come in and eat. And he's like, it's going okay. He's like, man, but it'd be really great if we had this bridge over here blown up, because if we did, then the Union soldiers wouldn't be able to get across it. But this bridge is nonetheless there, and we're having trouble. We need somebody to go and blow it up. That way the Union soldiers can't get across. And he says, well, I could go do that. He's like, really? I don't remember if he actually tells me he's going to do that or not, but the guy tries to sneak to the bridge and blow it up himself, but it reveals in the story that the soldier who came and said we need somebody to blow that bridge was actually not a soldier from the South. It was a Union soldier. And they're just going amongst people in the community trying to tell them that they should go blow up the bridge, and anytime one of them shows up to blow it up, they hang them. So it's like what is that police concept? Entrapment, where you get somebody to commit the crime by putting them in a situation they never would have been in the first place had you not posed it to them. Happens a lot with pedophiles. Did you know that? A cop who is like 40 will go on the computer, pose a 15-year-old girl, aggressively message like a lonely 30-year-old guy. And once he agrees to meet her, they'll arrest him and say he's a pedophile. Where the guy never would have gone out seeking a relationship, but as soon as the girl expresses interest in him, then he can't say no. So they do this sort of thing all the time. So it says, my gosh, if we don't blow up the bridge, the North will win. Well, we don't want that. I'll go blow up the bridge. And he shows up to the bridge, and they're like, traitor, we're gonna kill you. And so they jumps off the bridge, they hang him. And as he goes down, the rope breaks and he runs away and he gets back to his house. But it actually didn't really happen. It was his life flashing before his eyes, or him having a fantasy, and it's actually his neck breaks seconds later when the rope. Yeah. But that story, it's not as much in classes. It's pretty decent. But every single thing that story does, this story does better. The pulling out the rug where you think something's happening, but it's really not. That story has a third-person narrator. It's very cold and distant. The time jumps in the story are very clear. This tells a story more like people who tell stories. They jump around in time. They say, well, actually, what you need to understand about this is that back in, we jump around in time. It's talking about, we say she will kill herself, and it talks about Homer, but it's already kind of talked about Homer in the past a bit. And it jumps around talking about when she gets the arsenic for the rats, and it's not told in chronological order. The narrator is nonetheless very expressive and very funny. And I think that a lot of times we don't expect something bad is going to come when we see humor. We don't expect to be shocked whenever we see a lot of humor. I don't know what that is, but when y'all read Good Man is Hard to Find, I shouldn't have said that. Good Man Hard to Find is a very funny story. I told you all the stories next week are kind of messed up, but Good Man is Hard to Find is really funny. And I think a lot of times people don't expect the ending coming because of how funny it is. But hopefully I'll just forget that I said that. Can you promise to forget that I said that? Just never happened. Anyways, we'll move on from this one and talk about, I assume, next Yellow Wallpaper, because of the 6% difference. Those who liked, or even anybody else, Yellow Wallpaper, how'd you feel about that one? How did Yellow Wallpaper make you feel?
Mad?
What?
Mad?
Mad? Mad why?
Because the physician asked her husband didn't listen to anything that she said.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good reason. It's a good reason to be mad.
I had to reread it a few times to catch some of the details in it.
Which ones?
Like just the wallpaper, like how she was comparing the wallpaper to how she felt and how she felt trapped and stuff in that room, and how she would compare it to basically her mental state and how she felt with her husband and everything else.
That was one I don't remember having to read it. I didn't have to read it a couple times. Not that I don't think there would be a redeeming quality in reading it a few times. You'll catch more details that way. But I remember thinking to myself, I guess as more of a modern reader, like there's no way this is going to turn out well. I mean, you lock somebody in a room. I was like, the only thing that could happen is they're going to go nuts. I mean, I could not think of any other possible scenario. Like, honey, you just stay up here. You rest. Everything will be fine. And I just remember thinking that's the worst idea like ever. We get like little hints that it's going to be a bad idea because doesn't she want to like move the bed? She's like, well, actually move the bed. No, can't move the bed. You know, as any nice room is, the bed's bolted to the floor. Anytime you feel locked in a room, you just feel like somebody feels like you're crazy. You know, like, well, we can't trust you to move the bed. Why? It's just so strange. So strange.
I felt like the wallpaper, I felt her obsession with it before it was an allegory into maybe postpartum depression. Because it mentions she just had a child, and of course, back then it was
That was me.
dismissive for females to have or in depression in general. And so anybody that suffered from postpartum depression can relate to the way the writer speaks about how she was being told basically get over it, it doesn't exist, and how she kind of just focused on the wallpaper. And again, I feel like it was an allegory for her postpartum.
Yeah, definitely. I do think that's an issue that at least when the depression and I guess specifically postpartum depression, because men don't even go through that one. I mean, I guess men can. It's just not as common. But since men were most of the doctors back then, and postpartum depression was something that would have been specific to females, it sounds to them like something that's not real. You must be going through something that you need a rest cure. You need to just not do anything.
It was like hysteria back then.
Yeah, hysteria. Yeah. Like they try to make her not do anything, and the mind naturally needs something to do. So it recedes into the wallpaper, and it does sort of function as like the allegory for the whole situation, I guess. Or it's a pretty good metaphor for the entire situation. And I'm curious as to your thoughts on this. Why do you think the male doctors thought in a situation where it seemed like somebody was depressed or sad or hysteric or can't seem to get their bearings or feels overwhelmed, why would the first assumption that all these like male doctors would make is that a woman just needs to sit and do nothing and like be in one spot? Like, what's the reason for that being their assumption of what's going to work? I mean, did you look at the biography of Gilman that came before the story? That said that essentially she was prescribed the same treatment, but realized pretty quickly that that wasn't going to work, and realized she sort of came to a conclusion about what was actually wrong and what she needed to do. And what Gilman did was she ended up moving to California, leaving her husband, leaving her child behind. Her husband raised it with his new wife. She married a new guy, she wrote political tracts and like feminist texts like the rest of her life, and found happiness that way. But it seemed like very similarly to the story of an hour, she sort of realized that, oh, okay, I don't think marriage is my, or at least not marriage and being a parent is necessarily my destiny. She's like, I think this other thing is my destiny. But why do the men who see women like this, their assumption is, well, you probably should just not do anything. You're doing too much. Why is that the conclusion they draw?
Maybe it's a sexist point of view. Maybe it's because depression or something like that is not a tangible illness that can be treated like, say, a virus or something. So they didn't really have a prescription, or so they just thought just rest, or something like that along those lines.
And see, they didn't prescribe. You said like the sexist thing, but my curious question is, why not prescribe the same rest cure to men? Because
they can't relate to like how it's affecting a woman. Like if like some dude was going through depression, he could be like, oh yeah, man, like I understand like how you feel, but as a woman, he can't like fully understand what that's like for her, so he doesn't really know like how to help her.
I don't think men really showed that side back then because it was a sign of weakness. It wasn't, the male demeanor to show any sort of fault in that sort of respect.
It was okay for a woman to show weakness, I guess.
Yeah. They were more vulnerable, more of a looked at as a fragile flower.
A fragile flower. I've been curious if part of it was that it was a combination of two things. One is that a man had no concept of what a woman actually found value in or could. That if she's overwhelmed, it means she's doing too much and she needs to stop doing stuff. Like raising the baby's hard. Well, we need to take you away. We need to get a maid to do that. And then you'll just sit. And then maybe she well, can I go on walks and stuff, or like paint or write or something? No, that's gonna make it worse. Because the problem is doing stuff. What if I did stuff I want to do? No. Now, the problem itself is doing stuff. You need to sit. I think it's difficult for a man to, at least at that time, not today, to think of a woman as a person, like with an inner life and cares and thoughts and dreams. And I saw the other day, this is terrifying, Turkey. There's been a law proposed in Turkey where a man who rapes a woman could avoid prison if he marries he marries the girl he raped. So like if he rapes it, and it said like it was specific only to situations where the rape was not a violent or forced rape. I was like, how do you define it? Because I was like, that's a really weird. So like the man asked, may I rape you? Like I'm very confused. Like what are the, and I think that what he was talking about was like the situations where it was like a child bride. That was the kind of rape they were talking about. Where it was like 12 and 13-year-old girls that had been married.
Again, that's more of a cultural thing. Say like Saudi Arabia, if the woman you get raped is because, well, you were out being promiscuous and you asked for it, and you're the one that's going to get thrown in jail for it.
Yeah.
India, if you rape somebody, you can avoid jail by saying, okay, here's my sister, have fun. So, I mean, it's more of a cultural thing, and then also you got to look at it like when I was deployed from the Middle East, it was always, don't look at the women as you're doing in the United States. The objects are nothing. Ignore norm. That's what they always told us. So, like, don't open the doors for them, don't do anything you normally would.
I could not be in the military in that situation. I don't think I could. I've always known that if I went to the military, I would never be good in the military because I'm not good at following orders. I'm just really bad at it. If somebody would tell you, you need to do this, and they would yell it at me, like scream it at me, do it! I would say, why? And they would be like, you're not for this place. Tis not to reason why, tis but to do or die. Wasn't that what the old poem said? That's what good soldiers do. But I would I think me personally. I want to be okay in my thoughts of thinking that certain cultural beliefs are bullshit, and that I don't have to think that they're okay. Because to me, some parts of the world just need to catch up. And I think that's what the women in Turkey were really pushing hard for this, that this is not an okay law. And I think that there was even a law that was proposed in Alabama that said something like it would give rapists rights over whether a woman aborted a child. So that if you wanted to spread your seed amongst the human race, all you had to really get to do is rape a bunch of women, and you'd have control over whether they could abort, and you're the father of hundreds, if not thousands, of children. And you get to live forever, immortalized through rape. It sounds horrible to say something like that out loud, but that's essentially what it opens the door for. And it's supposed to sound horrible and crass and awful because that's what it is. And I think that the law in Turkey possibly being passed, where you could just avoid jail time if you marry a rapist, they may consider the thoughts of the rapist, or the raped. I don't know, women as objects. I can't stand that idea. And again, when you're writing your essays, if I was writing my essay, me getting pissed about the Yellow Wallpaper, same as Story of an Hour, I'd say because I have, 3 women in my life very important to me, all right here. See, I want my hair to be even longer than that. You see how long that hair is? My wife was like, it's too long, but they could fit us in for pictures now. And I couldn't get a haircut that fast. I have to mentally prepare myself. I tell my wife, okay, I'm getting a haircut this day. I wish it was down here. I want to look kind of like Hobo Jesus. Or hippie Jesus or something. I don't know, this story makes me mad, when I read it. Makes me mad. And the fact that, I very much appreciate, though, that there are stories like this, and I really think barn burning as well. Barn burning, while it does have Abner's a racist, very much a racist, very much a bad person, these stories that expose the problems of systems of oppression, not just individuals who are oppressive. Abner, bad dude, but he lives in a system that has developed him. The same in Yellow Wallpaper, where I think ultimately, just like Story of an Hour, the husband's painted as somebody who really does have the best in mind for his wife. He wants her to feel better. That's all he really wants. He doesn't want her to go crazy in a room. He sees her creeping along the walls, and doesn't he pass out? I mean, and I assume, too, the creeping is not crawling like a baby. I've always thought it's one of those, The Ring or something, coming down the hallway. Where you're like, oh, hell no. You ever seen that, the market, the YouTube video on the market where it's some lady who's a contortionist, and she starts running backwards on and her chest is up, and she's running backwards for these people, and they're in Dollar Tree. And they freak out and they run away. That's kind of the reaction I would think you would have when you see her. The problem was that it was a system where the only people whose thoughts and opinions were sort of respected were men, and women's thoughts and opinions weren't respected. And when you have a world like that, it breeds a situation in which a man who ultimately wants nothing but good for his wife and wants to do better by her, the conclusion he comes to of what's going to make her better is actually the thing that makes her worse. You end up coming with the wrong ideas when you exist in a system that's kind of backwards. Like the same thing's happening right now with the collegiate situation. Have y'all heard about? I'm sure y'all did hear about Lori Loughlin and from Full House, Aunt Becky. Buys her kids way into college, right? And that's illegal. We have, you buy your kids way into college, you lie, you do all that stuff. Apparently that's illegal enough you can get sent to prison. Boom. Took care of that. But I read that something is happening in every city, like in America, basically, that is, I think it said it was like almost 100 times more like theft if you think about the resources involved over what this situation was with Lori Loughlin and them. 100 times per city more expensive for the communities themselves that are involved. And it was a story that apparently broke about Booker T. Washington in Dallas, the school. You heard of that school before? It's literally Juilliard, I think it said in the article I read, puts some spots aside for kids from Booker T. Washington every year because it always pumps out such good art students. And over time, this got to be known by people, I guess, in the Dallas area, the whole DFW like metroplex. And it became a very popular school for people to try to get into. But I learned this from the article, and I might have some of the percentages a little off, but I know I've got one right, that DISD, the demographic makeup of DISD, is something like either 40 or 55% or 35 and 60%. 40% like black, 55% Hispanic, or it's 35% black, 60% Hispanic. I can't remember which. I do remember one, which is it's 5% white, DISD. I did not know that. DISD is 5% white. That's a very low percentage. So high minority populations, poor in the city. But Dallas is a city that has a lot of resources. And so they've created these magnet schools, like these kind of art schools where you can go to where people show proficiency in arts. They can go to this public school that you have to apply to get into, and if you show enough ability, they'll let you in. However, Booker T. Washington is something like 37 to 43% white. At least in recent years it has been. It wasn't always that way. And the rest are evenly distributed as they are in the DISD school district among black and Hispanic. And so somebody found this very odd, and they researched it and found that the families who lived there, like the requirements to claim residency in Dallas ISD were very not specific. Like they weren't specific enough. So that you could have, what ended up happening was basically people from Frisco, Plano, Allen, all those like really rich suburbs, heard about Booker T. Washington and how there was like, I think, what was it, 28 million, 280 million every year in scholarships were given to students of Booker T. Washington. And they went, well, we got to get in on that. I want my kid to go to college and do well and get into a good school. So they bought a Dallas ISD apartment that was in the district for like $500 a month and paid on it for a couple of years. Like, was that $6,000 a year? They didn't have to pay for really utilities. They don't need them. They're not living there. But they bought an apartment, spent $24,000, but then they ended up getting like $100 and something thousand, maybe $1 million scholarship for their kid. So it ended up, if you think about what's really happening there, it was people who are rich stealing resources from a poor community. If you think about what's really happening, because those resources exist, and the reason they designed that whole school system is to benefit the poor people who normally wouldn't get that access to those sorts of resources. And it's meant to take the best talent from those poor communities and give them the resources to succeed and throw off that balance and let people who are from a poor environment succeed. But that wasn't how it was working. It was rich white people coming in, buying spots, and then getting all the scholarships. And when the story broke about how lax the requirements were on residency, Booker T. Washington announced that they would have more stringent ways of verifying residency in the upcoming school year. And I think it said like 20 to 25% of students didn't show up for the next semester because they went, oh, like it wasn't technically illegal, but they didn't want to have a story written about how they still came and have them be pointed out. So, oh man, how was that related to the Yellow Wallpaper? Oh, so it's a system. What are you going to do? You're going to tell parents, don't do what's going to be the best situation for your kid? My kid wants to be a dancer. My kid's got great talent in dancing. I'm going to buy an apartment in the Dallas School District, send them to this school. They're going to get great scholarships for dancing. They'll go to a great school to be successful. It's hard to tell a parent not to do whatever you can to help your kid succeed. It's hard. I mean, the problem is the laws in place, the system that exists. So you have to change the laws to change the system so that those sorts of things can't happen anymore. And the problem is the situation here with Yellow Wallpaper was similar. It was the system itself that was a problem. Because you have a guy who ultimately loves his wife, doing what he thinks is the right thing, nonetheless making a terrible decision, and not realizing that it would be. Because of the thoughts that men had about women at the time, just in general. And that's kind of sad, you know. I'm sure we have similar stuff going on these days in lots of ways, like I just explained. And the same thing is really, because we only have 5 minutes left, might as well talk about barn burning. I've got to hit that in there so we can cover all the stories because of the quiz. But, by the way, quizzes are reopened. Discussion posts reopened, so you can do those ones. But don't forget there are new ones too. You're going to see quiz 0 and 1 on there. You need to do both. You're going to see discussion post 0, 1, and 2. You need to do all 3 if you haven't. But in barn burning, let's be real. Abner Snopes is he sucks. He's a terrible human being. He goes people's places. He burns their barns. He's good at not getting caught. And why does he do it? I think he's kind of pissed that the rich get all this stuff and they extract it from poor people, essentially. I think that's what he's pissed about. He's also pissed, I think, because he's being viewed as an equal with black people for the first time, and he doesn't like it. I think it pisses him off a lot. Because he's a sharecropper, right? And what does a sharecropper do? Y'all remember what sharecroppers do? What a sharecropper works is, excuse me, the way sharecropping works is some rich landowner's got land, and it's not doing anything for him, so he needs it farmed. He says, come farm our lands. So you come to the land and you say, yes, I'll farm your land. He says, okay, at the end of the season, I want this much of what you've got. You can have this much. I'll sell it, or you can sell it, and then you'll make your money. And he's like, that's great. So you farm it. But the problem is you need resources over time, and this land is often very far from the city. There's a closer store that you can go to, but it's owned by the landowner. And it's got all the resources you need. It's like a little convenience store. Everything's a little more expensive than usual. And you don't have the money yet because you haven't farmed it yet, but you can open a line of credit. And you open a line of credit, and you know how it is with credit. It doesn't feel like real money. Hopefully none of you are 18-year-olds who went and got a credit card already, because that's going to be a nightmare. If you're like, hey, I don't have money, but I've got this credit card, it can make up for the fact that I don't have money. See, you're not supposed to use it for that. Weirdly enough, credit cards are supposed to be like, you only use them to build credit. That's the whole reason you use a credit card, is to not spend more money than you have. But I don't have time to go into that. It's a long, complicated discussion that tries to save your life, but you can ask me later if you want. But credit's a bad thing if you use it as an income supplement. If you use it a way to get over the fact that you don't have money. It's not meant for that, because later on you have to pay it back, and later on when you have money, you'll end up basically having as much money as you do now, because you're paying off both the thing that you owed and you're making what you have, and you have to pay off those debts too, because you don't just have one set of bills in the future, now you have two, the ones where you pay the original set of bills. And that's sort of what happened to Abner Stokes and his family. was at the end of the season when the money finally comes through, turns out instead of getting a profit off what you farmed, you now owe money to the store. So you got to work another season, and now you owe more money to the store. So it's like this infinite loop where you owe money. Some kind of scam like they do now with truck drivers, where you can start driving a truck and then you do this thing right here, and we'll actually it's a lease to own. So you join our trucking company, you lease to own, you'll eventually own your truck. The problem is the trucks lose enough of their value by the time you own it at the end, and it has enough problems with it that you end up owing money to the trucking company itself instead of having a way to drive and earn money for yourself, which is a scam we've had problems with today. So Abner's stuck in this loop of sharecropping, and what's made things really worse is now he's making less money. Does anybody know why?
Because there are more people farming on the land.
There's more people farming on the land because the slaves just got freed. There was one thing you used to have in the South when you were white and poor. At least you weren't a slave. And then the slaves were freed. And now I'm poor and I'm equal to the slaves? No, I'm still better than they are. Because you had a bunch of racist people who couldn't get over the fact that the slaves were free. And I love the cookie metaphor. Have you ever heard the cookie metaphor? You have a table with you have a plate with 100 cookies on it. And a rich guy takes 99 cookies and then tells the white poor guy, "Are you going to let that guy take your cookie?" And then the white guy gets mad at the black guy. And they fight over who gets the cookie. When the dude with 99 cookies is going, "That's right, fight, ha ha!" Because as long as nobody's looking at him, he didn't care. You make poor people war with each other and get mad about who's more poor.
You literally just described
So
It's impressive how simplified it is.
yeah, but what happens with Abner is he lives in that situation. He's angry at the person who's poor next to him, but he finally realizes, I need to get mad at the rich people too, and he gets mad at the rich people, burns their barns down. But it turns out at the end of the story, he's actually just a jerk anyway, because when he went to war, he didn't actually go as a soldier. He went just to get treasure off dead bodies. He went to loot dead bodies like we do in Skyrim. He was like, I don't care if you're north, I don't care if you're south, you've got new boots and I want them. You've got a gun, you've got a horse, and then one time he steals a horse and gets shot. And that's why he's got the limp. It's because he's a jerk. But he also lives in a society that allowed a jerk to be built, a society built on slavery. And it's very convenient for people now to always say, well, I'm not responsible for that. I'm not the one who decided to buy slaves. No, we are responsible for creating a society that's better. And it's going to take hundreds of years to recover from the damage that was caused by slavery. Because when you have an entire people that's oppressed and then say, now you're free, that doesn't just fix everything. You go through a civil rights movement, you go through Black Lives Matter movement, you can continually go through movements and movements and movements until nobody sees differences in each other anymore. It takes a long damn time. So it's not just Abner that's the problem, it's everything that built Abner on top of that.
The problem wasn't Abner directly, it was the society that built Abner.
It's definitely Abner and the society that built Abner. But he's a jerk, and so is the society that made him. You have a great day. These are locked in, so if you didn't make one, it's gone. So Yellow Wallpaper, it's pretty big. So we'll talk about Yellow Wallpaper first. Make sure we get that one out of the way. Or not out of the way. I like talking about Yellow Wallpaper. Just say make sure we talk about that one, because you'll find that one the most worthy of talking about. Why? That I'm not going to put up there. It's too complicated a question. Interesting. It would feel very ironic if I just took over and started talking, since the story is about a man who took over and got his wife's health wrong. I would feel bad if I took over the whole conversation and told you what it's about.
So how does it work? Do you say what we thought it was about, or you mention something about it?
You have to say what you think it was. I mean, I think what it's about is generally pretty clear. Like, it's kind of like talking about. I don't know what stuck out to you was interesting. The stuff that's worth talking about that came out of the story, like what ideas it brought up, why we think it's lasted throughout time. I mean, there's not really a rule to it. It's kind of like a discussion post just out loud. I'm not looking for you to tell me like, here's what I think it was. I mean, you can tell me what you think it was trying to say, but I mean, you don't have to say like, well, here's symbolism or something. I mean, like you don't have to feel like you're like there's no pressure. I don't think there's not like a right answer to any of this.
I thought it was interesting that like the whole thing about it is that it's about like men trying to like suppress women, but there was also I think it was like Jeannie, who was also a woman that also like dismissed her concerns too. So it could have something to do with the society thing rather than like just the genders. I don't know. I just tried to start it.
Society's views of the genders.
Society's good open-ended thing.
I think what they try to do is they try to depict the wallpaper as maybe kind of the way the way she described it was the way she was starting to feel after a while. She said it was torn and ugly and dark and dull, and the males, or even that female, Jenny, right, Emma,
Yes.
tried to suppress her and try to keep her away and isolate her, and how everything between her and John was torn, like there was no connection there whatsoever, and everything she tried to do, they told her not to do, but ended up doing it anyway.
Just in the limited space that she had. Well, what do you mean by everything she told her not to do?
Like they told her not to write or read
right.
newspaper or watch this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
But then they would turn around, let her, and they would leave the room that she's in, and they would end up reading the newspaper and watching whatever, and keeping her isolated from the world.
Why do you think isolation? Like, why do you think they might have thought that isolation would help? Like, why that would be the solution? I mean, it appears as though she had something, I would say, like, I don't know, like anxiety maybe?
Maybe they thought it was like a personal problem. It was something that she needed time to figure out herself, and also it might have been like easier on them to not like have to work at it, just to say she needed to think about it.
I'm curious as to why they said, well, she could think about it outside, like on a walk.
Maybe they thought she was overwhelmed.
They overwhelmed, like, yeah, I think they use that word quite a bit, don't they? Like, there's just too much for her. Overwhelmed. Well, I mean, like, it's not especially whelming to walk, is it? Like, to go, like, out in nature and, like, have, like, a relaxing wandering through the woods, or to paint, or to write, or, I mean, those sound like fairly relieving tasks. I'm just trying to figure out why they would do that. Like, why this? Why isolation?
Like maybe on the writing thing, like they thought her mind was like overworked, so they felt like maybe like mental exertion would be too much for her.
Or maybe they just didn't want to deal with her.
Didn't want to deal with her?
No, like her husband was tired of her, so he was like, okay, get in the room.
I think to me, this is similar to Story of an Hour, where he's not really painted as like a bad dude. Like, he's not, I don't know, it doesn't seem like he's necessarily bad. Like, he wants her to get better.
He just doesn't care.
He's just wrong about what might help.
In the little excerpt about like the author,
Yeah.
it said that I think her husband had an affair when she was dealing with her mental illness.
He had what?
An affair.
Oh, okay. I didn't notice that.
I think that's what it said, or I'm just filling in information. But maybe she was like, so maybe she was alone a lot when she was dealing with hers, and so she just kind of put that in the story because she related to it.
Maybe, like, I know.
That could be wrong information, and I'm just.
Well, I'm not remembering the affair. I do remember something about a relationship There definitely was that.
Got remarried, and then she gave up her daughter. I think it was a daughter that they had, and then she gave it up to her husband, and his new wife.
Well, then maybe because she was dealing with mental illnesses and she felt like unwanted because he wanted, or they like, were gonna divorce, so they were probably not into each other anymore. So maybe she felt isolated, and so she made the character someone she related to.
I think that is correct. I think that I don't recall them. Yeah, I don't recall the affair. I don't. Yeah, I'm not. I mean, maybe if you read it somewhere else and there's an affair that was not mentioned here. What now?
Maybe I just filled it like a soap opera thing.
Yeah. Because it says, and now this is interesting. It's not the normal story. So, depression. That's right. So she had depression. Depression is never my go-to mental illness. It's not ever the first thing I think of because I don't have it. I know it's terrible. Like a lot of us don't think first of the thing that we don't. Like it's probably the thing. Like we all have little bits of things here and there. Like we probably have like some inability to pay attention at times, or we get anxious about things, or we get like a little bit depressed about things. But like the people who have like the mental illness, it's marked. It takes over their life. So we have little aspects of things, like it doesn't take over us. But so depression is something I don't even really struggle with a little bit. Like it's not something I never feel just overly sad about things, or overwhelmed with thoughts of. I hardly even have a context for it because it's hard for me to. Sometimes I get anxious because I'm like, got a lot of crap to do and I'm not doing it. But other than that, so depression after the birth of her daughter Catherine in 1885. So that's something even postpartum depression that I would never deal with. I don't think. I mean, men can get it. I think it's just not as. I don't think it's common. Seeking help for emotional turmoil, Gilman consulted the eminent neurologist Silas Vere Mitchell, who prescribed his famous rest cure. So this is actually based on sort of her experience a little bit. She didn't go through what the female character went through. She's not actually given a name, is she? Appropriate. This treatment, which forbade Gilman to work, actually worsened her distress. I mean, professors have like what's called a sabbatical. Have you ever heard of that? A sabbatical is where like a professor can. I can't because I'm not a research. This is not a research institution. Like an institution where people do research, like say at UT, a teacher can apply for a sabbatical, which means they get like a semester off. I think where they're still paid, but they don't have to teach and they just work on research for like a full year. And then they come back to work and they start teaching again and doing and they only teach like 2 classes at like a university. At like UT. A&M Commerce, I think they teach like 3 or 4, but UT their teaching obligations are very low. And sometimes there are people who just do research. Like that's all they're paid for. But she's got that kind of mind and she wrote a lot and like he said, you should just not do anything. And she improved only after she moved to California, divorced her husband, let him raise Catherine with his new wife, married someone else, and plunged fully into a literary and political career. That's a lot of information for one sentence. Now I don't know. I've only read this blurb. I haven't really gone out and read a whole lot of other like blurbs about her. And I was in grad school and we talked a little bit about her, but I don't remember an affair that he had.
I think I saw divorce and I wanted to make it more dramatic, so I went.
And I think what happened is she went, oh, I know what I need. And she kind of went, I need not to be married. I can't deal with this kid thing. He said, I guess I will. And he raised the daughter with the new wife. She married somebody else. And she plunged fully into literature. So she found her balance. She figured out where she needed to be. But yeah, this is very similar to the experience, I guess, that or not so much. I don't think she. I think she figured out it was pretty much BS from the beginning. I don't think she went through exactly what this protagonist went through. But I think this is like her writing about what she felt could have ended up happening to many women who go through this rescuer. Like this is where you could end up. But I still kind of like, to me, like I think that this is terrible. I think Emily you're kind of sort of right with the so they don't have to deal with her kind of reason. Like I think y'all have seen that before. Like we didn't watch this video in 1301, but there was a video that I used to have time to watch, but I talked too much. And it was Dan Ariely. You ever heard of this guy? Dan Ariely? He wrote a book called Predictably Irrational. He's I think he's a sociologist, but he deals with behavioral economics. Yeah, he's a behavioral economist. So he looks at like a lot of economics is based on the fact that we supposedly make rational decisions all the time. Like we look at like money and we make rational decisions like, oh, I need this much and this much, I'll buy this and this. But he says that people are irrational. One of the examples he uses is like, let's say that there's a lamp that you could get at the store that's like a mile from your house, and it's $15. But the store that's 2 miles from your house, you could get it for $7. Like, would you drive the extra mile to get the discount? Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Now there's a car you're gonna buy, and it's at a car dealership a mile from your house, and it's $24,999. But it's at another dealership 2 miles from your house for $24,992. Are you gonna drive the extra mile to get it for less? Some people still would, but most people are like, no, that's barely even any savings. But if you look at both scenarios, it's the exact same amount of money you're saving. Like, wait, as long as I did the math right. I don't think I did. No, I didn't. $24,991 what I should have said. Would you do that? You'd probably still say no. But the thing is, like, we go, oh, a lamp 2 miles away, half off, boom. But like we go, but like that's like barely even, that's not even a percent, like 1% of the car's value. I'm not going to drive that extra distance for that. But $7 is $7. So we don't always make like rational decisions. So in Dan Ariely's talk, he found that when he was a burn victim, because he got burned over like I think 60-75% of his body, and so he was in the hospital for a long time, and the lady had to change his bandages. And she said, like, well, we found that if you rip them off quickly, it gets it over with quickly, and like it's painful. And so over time, he said, well, can we try something? And he asked different burn victims, and they tried it with different burn victims to see if it was easier for the burn victim if the bandages were pulled off rather quickly, or if they spent a lot of time slowly doing it over the course of like an hour or two. And they found that it was a lot easier for the burn victims to have it pulled off slowly over an hour or two. And then when they told the nurses about it and they told the data that they'd gathered, the nurses didn't believe it. They were like, no, we don't like that. I think it kind of comes down to what Emily's saying, is because like the whole time they're pulling the things off the burn victims, the nurses really don't like it. Like, it's very uncomfortable with them. So the longer that's drawn out, the worse it is for the nurse. But if they get it over quickly, they're like, okay, whew, done. And I'm sure a lot of the things that your parents with you, they'll often like the way you live your life or something. It's just because it's easier for them to not have to mess with. I mean, I know that's true of like me and my daughter. Like, it's been so nice since it's terrible. It's been so nice since she's had a boyfriend. He drives her to school, and I can get to work on time. Like, it's just like it's a strange thing. And I'm like, I literally had this thought this morning. Let's take. And probably it's some combination of like the husband doesn't understand the wife's thoughts, and weirdly enough, I think because of probably there's the social, like you said, society like kind of has these feeling. Society kind of pushes it in this direction, and I think that that's true. But I think it's the same society we kind of saw in Story of an Hour, where the society assumes that men will be in charge, and that you'll marry a man, and she marries a man, and the men are sort of in charge, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a husband. In this story, the husband is a doctor. And the idea is, well, our assumption about what's best for you is you've always been in the home. Why wouldn't the cure be, like, if something was wrong with you and you feel sad, it's probably from having to leave the home too much or having to do too much. You probably, because the view of a husband's view of what a wife does at home is really not much, right? I go out and I work, but you stay here and you don't really do a whole lot. You just kind of sit around. It's a sexist viewpoint, like that. There's not really much that happens, and so of course the assumption is, well, you just need to do even less because you try to do too much, because women aren't capable of doing that much without it affecting them negatively. I think that that's kind of what she's trying to point out in the story. I don't know if you saw it the same way. I mean, there's got to be a reason. That's why I asked that question. There's got to be a reason they think that not doing anything would make someone feel better. And she obviously thinks, the writer, this is what happens if you tell a woman she can't do anything. It's going to drive her nuts. And I literally think that this is the kind of situation where you can say she's been driven a little nuts. Because when you merge yourself with the wallpaper and creep around the walls of the room, like that's, I was thinking of something like The Ring, which is like, moving like all around the room, like at the end. I was just like, yeah, I was just like, I had it like, like doing like the weird, like nobody would crawl like that, but I had it like doing like a spider crawl. And then because it's got to be something that your husband would see and he'd pass out, right? And I was just like, if she's just kind of, it's not gonna. What are you baby crawling for, honey? But if she's, that's a little weirder. You ever notice that if a man leaves a woman, people think he's kind of a dog? Like, that ass. Leaves a wife with her child. Horrible. But people in the same scenario, but a woman leaves her child. Huh? Oh, I think the opposite of that. Like, I think what people generally think is if a woman leaves a child, but she gave birth to that. Like, how dare she? It's just, there's something that people will view that differently. They'll view that as sort of like a worse betrayal than a dad who just never comes back after going out for cigarettes. Like if a mom went out and said, I'm going out for cigarettes, and like she never comes back, everybody's like, what? That doesn't happen. Yeah, people tend to view that differently for some reason. I guess it's because it was in her for so long. It. Well, I don't know if it's a he or a she. In this case, she had a girl, but so yeah, so odd. Instead of giving her freedom to like write and paint, maybe just relaxing for a bit would help. It's maybe you should be allowed to do nothing. The bed is screwed down to the floor, isn't it?
Yeah. Cool.
Like if I could just move no. Can't change anything, that would be stressful. Better lock you in the room, that's less stressful. Good Lord. So dumb. Can you imagine like parents grounding their children like I'm doing this for you. I always thought like if you like lock a kid in a room, they're gonna get more antsy. What? Do y'all have parents who say like, I don't know, please, I hope people don't say this anymore. This is very irresponsible. Like, do what I say, not what I do.
Yeah.
They shouldn't. You can't say that. Kids don't do that. Kids do what you do. Did you know there was a study done on children that found that if illiterate parents sat in a house with an open book all the time, they couldn't read, they just turned the pages, they went through the motions, that children's literacy rates went up for those households. So if they saw their parents pretending to read, even if the kid would come up there and say, ah, da, 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 and they're like, oh yeah, of course. And like the parent would maybe like know at the most like Dr. Seuss, then the kids would, their literacy rates would still go up. Because you just do what you see your parents do. It's just one of those things. You nurture. What was that? Nurture? Example. And I hope parents are always giving you reasons for doing things, which I imagine that happens even less. Like why? You ask why. Don't ask why. I'm the parent. That's why.
You're stupid, that's why.
Did you apply or was there a test? Like, did you have to pass anything? I mean, you don't have the qualifications. You just have like, what was it, the qualities like by which you have the legal duties of a parent. Like, genetically they're related to you, and somehow you're involved in their birth. It wasn't like you passed a test and like you passed the parent test and you've been approved. Unless you're actually raised by, I think, foster parents, in which case that actually is what happened. Because you did have to take a test. They come a lot. They're like, hey, house check. Can you imagine if they did house checks at your house? They watched up and be like, what the hell are you here for? Like, how do you, I tell them I'm the parent, and what I say goes. And? Other things you want to say about Yellow Wallpaper? Please don't go home and say, my English teacher told me to ask you why you're having me do this. Because they'll be like, well, we got to get rid of this English teacher. What?
One thing I haven't heard is the fact that every time she says, oh, I think I'm getting better. No, you're not.
In the story? Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like she says she thinks she's getting better just so her husband will. Partly, I think after a while, it's so she's like, I got to figure out what's up with this wallpaper. She's just got to have more time with the wallpaper. It's so strange, like, how shocked he must have been to, like, what? This didn't work? A woman must not actually want to do anything. That's their conclusion. That's the man's conclusion about what women need. They'd probably be like, men, you just need to go hunt something. Find a deer, kill it. You'll feel better. Let's see. Rose Frimley. Interestingly, another story about a misunderstood woman.
Yeah. It was crazy. She killed her lover.
I'm not even ever sure that he was her lover.
I don't even think so. Cause like.
She's definitely upset.
Especially since her dad didn't let her socialize at such young/old age. Like not when he actually died is when she actually got to go out and actually experience the world. So other than that, she was showing her house for life.
I think by that, hey, we're still going here, guys. We're still doing literature stuff. Are you listening? Yeah, she was always under the rule of her father and never really had a chance to experience the world with true freedom, I don't guess, until he was gone. I want to say something real quick, if all of the ones who aren't talking right now about the story, if you're thinking in your head, well, yeah, because Homer was gay. Like, if that's your thought, she was pissed at him there's a whole theory around, she was pissed at him because, he said he was, gay or something. I've always thought, and unless I talked to Faulkner and asked him and he said, no, that's what I meant, I've always thought that sort of distracts from the real issue of the story. To me, when it says he enjoys the company of men, I've always thought of an older dude who's sort of you probably aren't old enough to know this or you shouldn't. But the older dude who goes to the bar and there's the young college age guys there, but he's in his late 30s, 40s, maybe 50s, and he always hangs around with the younger dudes and he wants to act he doesn't really have a relationship in his life, a wife or anything, but he looks for respect somewhere. So he goes to the bars and hangs out with the dudes, and he's like a good laugh, and he's got all these stories.
Sounds like my brother.
Sounds like your brother. To me, like that's his like character, and then I mean, she's like, so we're gonna get married, because I feel like if she said like, you know, she buys him that like, I don't know, I don't think she buys the toiletry set until after, or no, she does, she buys it before, but I think she employs it after, but buys him like this expensive toiletry set, and then like he goes, oh, I'm not really looking to settle down or anything. I think this is kind of over between us. And she's like, no, hold on. Stick around for just a little bit. Give me just a minute. And then she's like, let me go get some arsenic. So I think that was maybe more what was going on. Even if he was gay, it wouldn't really matter. I think that kind of cheapens her story if you say that she found out he was gay and killed him because of it. Because then that doesn't make any sense why she would want to sleep next to him for the rest of his life. Like, I killed the gay out of him, so now I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, by the way, I think I just read today that Utah, they got rid of conversion therapy. Yay. They struck it down. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like she kind of isolated herself because she probably found someone who was gay or not, and he was like pulling away, and she was like, I'm gonna make sure you're with me forever.
Yeah, I don't think she couldn't handle.
Like the possibility, I feel like she couldn't like she was really fragile, and she couldn't handle the fact that maybe one day he could leave her alone, or something could happen, and she like found a way to do it, and never leave her.
Right, she's like, oh, this is probably like my last chance. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities after that. After Dad's gone, she's got to be like older, and then a dude comes in her life. I mean, what it's like, it's really hard. I mean, even these days, even with I'm assuming like Tinder and stuff, it's difficult. I'm dating in like your 30s, 40s. I don't know what situation could pop up for my marriage, but I'm like, we're working it out. She's like, but you're horrible. I'll be better. Like, it doesn't like, like, but you're just awful, and I hate being around you. It's okay. We can work through that. If that ever happened. Yes.
So I was reading the story and I was like, man, this book's kind of like logos. So I was reading it, and then at the end of it, you know, the little recap questions, and it's like, do you think she's capable of love? And I was like, love? And I was like, oh, I probably read this story wrong because I had no clue what it was talking about for like the longest time.
Oh, so you didn't even think love was an issue. You just thought that she kidnapped some dude and killed him?
Yeah, I just kind of thought she was like crazy.
Oh, okay.
I read that the same way. I had to like reread it like 3 times to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, I had to talk to
There was a lot of stuff they wanted to imply, and I did not read it implying things in the beginning.
Oh, I see what you mean. I see. So you had to reread after you're done because you didn't catch what you were supposed to catch along the way?
I read it, but I think when I just like said I was just like read a story, and not until the end did when someone was dead, I figured there was probably some things I missed.
Yeah.
Like, I saw the arsenic and I was like, interesting, but it didn't connect for me.
She was gonna use arsenic on herself.
Yes, and I think that's what he definitely wanted to sound like when he wrote it. Yeah.
I feel like there was so much left unsaid in the book, like why she was so, like why she isolated herself, and then like they said it was kind of confused, like they were confused as to why there was love in there, like there was so much left unsaid to like kind of confuse the readers, like you know what I mean? Like there's just so much left unsaid to where some people were like, huh? There's a dead guy now, or like what?
Yeah, I do remember that when I took, it wasn't called 1302 at A&M Commerce when I took it. It was called like, I think English 201 or something. But when I read the story, I remember going through the exact same experience as you. I remember getting to the arsenic, and I was like, for rats. I was like, I didn't realize they used arsenic for rats back then. Like that was my only response to it, was like, weird, but I guess I just didn't know about what they did for past poisons. And then they said we smell the smell, and I was like, oh, so all the rats. Got it. That makes sense. And then like I got to the end of the story and went, the hell? There's like a dead body in her bed. Like what? Like what? And I had to like go back and reread because I was like, I obviously wasn't paying attention to the right kind of stuff along the way, and got totally tricked. But yeah, it's like the dead body comes as like a huge like surprise. It's not really something like you're expecting because the pieces aren't really lined up that way on purpose. At least the first time you read it. I think we're all supposed to be tricked. What was the hand I saw? Yeah.
I don't know. I got it as soon as like I read it because when they asked her the reason for the arsenic, she wouldn't give an answer, and I was like, oh, she's gonna do something. And it kind of clicked in my head. And I feel like Hannah said it wasn't really love, and I feel like it was more like obsession with him instead like with being somebody and not being her mom.
Yeah, it's. See, like I saw the arsenic and I thought kill herself. Like that was what I thought. Like the furthest I could think is, oh, she's gonna kill herself because she's sad because he left. But some people, I guess, can get it with like she's gonna kill him because of the obsession. But I don't know. Like obsession never entered into my mind. Like I don't know. For some reason, it was given to me that she was from like this well-to-do family. She was from like a rich family. Like they always had money, but the house is getting kind of decrepit and old. They're like an old money family. I don't know. For some reason I thought like that sort of not aristocracy. I don't know what you would call it. It's kind of like an aristocracy where like the rich old people who used to dress up fancy and they had like the big like plantation homes. I didn't think that somebody would kill somebody out of obsession. That just it didn't occur to me. I don't know. Seemed odd. But then when it happened, I was like, oh, of course. And I had to go back and reread. Yeah.
Oh, I kind of thought like she always had her dad like telling her what to do, and then he died, and then so she didn't really like know what to do anymore. So then she had this like guy, and then she realized that like she's gonna be alone because he's like gonna leave her. So I think she just didn't know what to do, and just kind of like acted.
Yeah, I think that sounds definitely like the response that she had to me. Didn't really know what to do, and of course she probably convinced herself that she was making some sort of strong decision. You know, like when you reread the story and she says like, "What do you need the arsenic for?" and she goes, "Rats." Like he's a rat. Like he was gonna like use me for my money and my connections for a little bit, and now he's just gonna leave that rat. But truly, I think inside, like the fragile part of her heart was like, I can't lose this guy. He's all I got, and just takes him out and lays him in bed with her. That's so weird that she slept next to him for all those years. How did she not die? Like, how did she not get sick with something? Was there like a little while that she let the body decay and she's like, I'll sleep on the divan, or something like.
Well, the room was locked up. It said for a long time that she locked the top room or the top portion of the house up for a long time. So I think she only slept with them for a couple years at least, and then locked it up and never used it again.
And see, that's the difficult.
Like the worst part, though.
That's the difficult thing that we have to consider in this story. Like, there's a story we used to read that students really liked, and they said, I like this story a lot. It was one of my favorite stories, and I got rid of it. It was something about, like, it was a Civil War bridge, but, like, this dude's being hung. He's going to be hung in a second, and, like, they knock him off the thing, and then it goes back in time and tells a story about how some soldier came and said, you need to go and blow this bridge up because the Union soldiers are going to use it. And this South soldier, this guy in the South, and he's in his house. He goes, I've got to do this. And he goes to the bridge. Turns out that the dude who told him that, like the South soldier, was actually a North soldier, like in a disguise. And when they were just going around town asking people to, like, oh, go blow up the bridge. And if people came to the bridge, they would hang them for being. Because they obviously realized if they can get somebody to go to the bridge, then they would blow up the bridge. And so there was this whole like reveal at the end of the story where like he thinks he's getting away, but he's running and running, and all it really was is his life was flashing before his eyes as he was being hung, and he didn't really get away, and he was actually dead. But that story, like you can feel everything coming, and it's very marked, and it's very. This story employs something that story didn't employ, which is what very well could be an unreliable narrator. Because does anybody know who the narrator is? Is the story in first person, third person?
It's one of those.
It's kind of difficult to remember, isn't it? So if we go to Rose Frimley here, where is Rose Frimley? What page? 497. I think it actually doesn't even take long to establish. When Miss Emily Grierson died, our whole town. The moment you hear a word that involves the reader, or like involves the person telling the story, it becomes a first-person story. So when it says, when Miss Emily Grierson died, our whole town. So our means that he's a group, part of the our group, which means that by the sixth word of the story, we know whether it's first person. So it's a character, it's a person. What person is it? Do we know? We never know. I mean, it's almost like we consider that person to be a non-entity. It's a first-person narrator that sounds like a third-person narrator almost the entire time. Now, what that does is it's an interesting trick because we take a lot of what we're reading at face value, but we have to be careful not to, because when he says like that the house was locked up in the upstairs, that's their assumption. That's what they think is going on. Is see no lights from like the upstairs. That's what they're told, but they don't actually know that every night when she goes to bed, she doesn't go up there and lay next to a corpse. That's just an assumption that they're making. And it's funny too, because the moment like she dies and they come to the house and it says somebody thought they saw the black servant run out the back as fast as he could, because he knows what's going on. He's been there. I've always thought it'd be interesting to have somebody do like I don't know if y'all know this, but there was I think a movie called March. I think, or not a movie, it was a book called March or Gilead or something like that. And they wrote the story of the dad in Little Women and his time at war, and it won like the Pulitzer Prize. So like they did kind of like a fan fiction of Little Women, and it won like the Pulitzer. But I've always thought a neat fan fiction to see would be like the story of this servant who runs out the back, because I want to like, what's this guy's take on everything? He obviously knows it ain't on the up and up. He's like, you know what? I think they're gonna have a problem with Miss Emily having killed that dude and slept to his dead body for years, because it was a deep impression and they had like a single strand of her hair. You know what's interesting? I think it says Faulkner got the idea for a story because he first imagined a single strand of hair on a pillow. That was a pretty big stretch, huh? And it's incredibly complicated, the story is. So we've got this unreliable narrator who's a person from the town, but we're kind of seeing through his eyes, right? So he just says this is what happened and this is what happened. And he jumps back and forth in time, so it's not always consistently moving forward. And it's just the way we would normally hear about stories, and it's confusing. I'm going to have trouble not referencing two things the entirety of this semester. It'd be great if people could just figure out ways to watch them. One will be very easy, because I've figured out a way to relate it to Story of an Hour. It relates to Rose Frimley. It relates to not Barn Burning as much, but Marriage Story. No, to Yellow Wallpaper. The movie is, guess what? It's on Netflix. It's called Marriage Story. There's a lot of cursing, because they're getting divorced, and people they curse a lot when they're getting divorced. They say bad words. Y'all are like, well, we do it on Snapchat too. But can you talk on TikTok, or is it just a place to watch things? You can message people on TikTok. Is it as robust a messaging system as, say, like other apps like Snap or?
Send, like, pictures from your camera.
So it literally just you can like talk, and that's about it.
Yeah.
No, yeah. So because I was curious, because like I don't really know anything about TikTok. I see the videos are funny, but if it's not as dangerous as it seems, then maybe I'll get it and watch because I miss Vines. You know, I want those back. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they referenced a TikTok, and I was like, I'm missing out on cultural things. Because podcasts are what's important to me. If I don't get references in podcasts, I'm like, that's bad. Old guy who listens to podcasts. That's what I've become. So, Marriage Story, it says a lot about like the difficulty of love and relationships, and that and like what is love? Like that's sort of the central question of that movie. Adam Driver, the guy who plays Kylo Ren in Star Wars, is the star of that movie, along with Scarlett Johansson, who plays Black Widow in Marvel. They're both superheroes in other contexts. But
I don't think Kylo Ren's a superhero.
I mean, not a superhero, but a supervillain. But he explained it on an interview that he went on as a love story told through the process of a divorce. So it's telling the story of a couple's love through the divorce they're going through, like what that love meant to them and like the impact that it's had on them and stuff. You've seen it? Yeah, it's really good. And by the way, it has the most accurate representation of lawyers, family law lawyers that I've ever seen in my life. Like they're exactly like that. And like the moment I heard like the first lawyer that he went and saw like say all this horrible stuff, I was like, he's the one, choose him. And he goes to this like lame lawyer instead, and I was just like, that's not gonna work. You got to go with the cutthroat guy. But later they say, well, this lawyers are stupid. We should just work this out on our own. And they try to talk it out. There's a reason lawyers make money. If people were capable of talking all their problems out and just keeping their promises, we wouldn't need lawyers. That's why they make so much money. Have a curious question is there's like I think it's somebody running for office, and their last name is Cornod. Is that related to the Cornod from Quinlan? The student? Huh? Yes. Is the person the one who's running for something, like the signs on the highway, is that like her like dad or relative or something?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Because I thought somebody told me one time that like her dad was a lawyer. Like in class they said like her dad was a lawyer or something. And I thought lawyers often will run for like, I think it was like district attorney or something too. So I don't know. I was just curious. But because she was one of my students too. But the other thing that I really wish people would watch, and this is going to be a lot harder to watch. Almost everybody has that Netflix or knows somebody's password. But the other thing is a lot harder to watch, and it's called Parasite. It's almost every story we have in the class that you could reference economics or class differences, stuff like barn burning, Parasite applies to. And Parasite is like Rose Vermeulen, where I watched it, got to the end, and was like, damn it, I have to watch this entire movie again immediately. And I immediately watched the whole movie again from the beginning and watched it to the end. Because it was really like, it's so weird. There's not any kind of like sci-fi elements or like spooky like ghost elements or anything, but it caught me and then like tricked me, and then I had to watch it again. It was brilliant. But those things are going to be very hard not to reference the entire semester. So if you can find ways to watch them, that'd be great. Keep in mind, though, I think that Marriage Story is probably rated R, although I don't know that it has an actual rating on Netflix. Does it?
Yeah, it's rated R.
Do they do that on Netflix?
Yeah, it shows you the second you start the movie and it pops up and it tells you like violence or language. It's like free fruit humor. It says that in French.
I've been an adult for so long, I don't even pay attention to that stuff anymore.
I had to show my ID the other day when I went to see a movie.
I got so scared too. And I was like, oh wait, I can watch
I'm that age when I go to a store, either they just don't ask me to show my ID, or they look at me like, will I piss him off if I do ask him? And then they still don't ask me.
Which one hurts your feelings?
Neither.
Some people get their feelings hurt. Like, are you serious?
I'm excited about my gray hair. Like, I don't care that I'm getting older. My wife's a little bit pissed because I keep telling her I'd rather her not dye her hair, which I know is a terrible thing to like. I told her, look, you can have control over my hair and I won't grow it out like I want to, because I would prefer to have hair that's like down to like here. That's what I want. So I look silly all the time, but that's what I like. I basically want to look like Hobo Jesus going around. That's what I used to look like. And basically, I guess at this age, I would look like the Big Lebowski all the time. I just have to get like a gray sweater. Yeah. But I told her like I really don't want her to like Like I'll give her control over like my hair if I can have somewhat control over her hair. Like it'd be like our one thing we control about each other. Because I can't control like what she wears and she can't control what I wears. Because what's she gonna do? Tell me you can't just wear graphic tees all the time? I can't. That's all I want. I can't wear anything else. But like I really don't want. I don't like it when like women dye their hair to not look young or like to look young. I don't like that. Because I feel like you can make yourself look young for so long, and there's like a switch that flips like at like a certain month in your life when suddenly everybody goes, "Oh, you just look like an old person trying to look young," you know? And you can't come back from that. You have to let your hair grow out to come back, and it takes for the dye to grow out of your hair takes forever, like to get like your natural hair color back and have it be gray. I want a wife that I can grow old with. Not a wife that I grow old and then she tries to stay young. I like the old ladies in movies who have like gray hair. I'm like, look at that long. I always make a point. I'm like, look at that long, pretty gray hair she has. It's so pretty. And she's like, I know. Shut up. I always tell her that. My mom doesn't dye her hair either. I'm actually shocked. I always thought my mom would, but she's cool with it. Now, barn burning y'all didn't seem to like as much, and we don't have much time to deal with it, but Abner Snopes, let's just do a quick summary. Abner Snopes, awful human being. Very important to read the last two paragraphs of that story. Not have your brain go on autopilot when you find out that the kid gives up his dad and says, he's going to go burn that barn. And they grab their gun and go, and you hear shots, and he's like, it's my fault, he's dead. We don't actually know he's dead. We just know that there were shots, and they could have gone up to him and been like, hey, you quit that. And then he was like, put his hands up. He just hears a couple gunshots, and he makes the assumption that they've been shot. But it's important to remember a couple of things about that story. One is that Abner, he's just an a-hole. At the end of the story, we get that they always thought, oh, he served in the army, like he was in the Civil War, and what he saw, that's why he is the way he is. But it says at the end of the story that when he went to the army, the way he served was he didn't go to serve one side or the other. He only went for booty. So basically, for B-O-O-T-Y, like booty, like.
He went to have sex.
No. He went for treasure.
Yeah.
He went to the battlefield so that he could pull the nice clothes and like guns and things and shoes off of the dead bodies. He went like the same way you play Skyrim and you like loot a body. That's what he went to war for. So when he got shot taking a horse, it was probably just because he stole somebody's horse. Not because he was trying to help the South, but because he just wanted a damn horse. So his war injury is not a war injury, it's a theft injury. He's just a jerk. And it probably drove him to be a jerk. He was probably already a jerk because he was a sharecropper and he lived in the South. And the one guarantee he always had was that he was better than the blacks because they were slaves. The whites could always look down on the blacks because they're slaves. I'm free. I don't get paid a lot, but damn it, I'm better than the black people. And then they got freed. And the blacks are told, hey, you're equal to these people. And they're just like, damn it, no, they're not. And they're pissed. And he goes and he burns down barns because he's pissed because he used to be the second up from the bottom of society. Now he's equal with the bottom of society. And he can't make any money because when you free slaves, it's not like people are like, all right, come take this corporate position. They have to find work somewhere. So they end up getting these little shanty houses and like working as sharecroppers and having basically the same job as the guy in Barm. And sharecropping sucks because they say, hey, I need somebody to till my land. Come till my land. They're like, okay, I'll till your land. They're like, we need to farm it. And he farms it. The problem with sharecropping is they need stuff. Like they need supplies to last until the crops yielded. And so there was one little store you could go to, and you would go to the store and get supplies, but the supplies had a huge markup, and the store was owned by the guy who was paying you. So you could open up a line of credit, and you'd open up a line of credit at the store, you'd get stuff, and then by the time you were done farming, you're in debt. Some of you may know people who are in that like trucking business where they drive trucks, but they're going to own their truck when they're done. They're doing like one of those things, but that's a scam. So you got to really like pay it. Like it's expensive to buy that truck over time. And by the end, when you get the truck, sometimes it's not even the best truck that they gave you. So like it's wore out, and so it's not even worth. So you have to basically stay with them forever, almost owing them money. Sort of the same deal the sharecroppers are having to deal with. So he was just sort of pissed about the whole economic situation. And granted, he's an a-hole. It's his fault. But the economic situation definitely had a. It's just like I told you, like in 1301, we watched that video when the guy says about the power of evil systems to make people do evil. The system was set up so that it's. Did I tell you all about the 99 cookie metaphor or the cookie metaphor? The way that essentially it worked back then and kind of still works now is there's a plate of 100 cookies on a table, and the rich guy says he takes 99 cookies and puts it on his plate, and then tells the white guy sitting in front of the plate to look at the black guy or the Hispanic guy and say, "You're gonna let him take your cookie?" But he's got 99 of them, but he says, "You're gonna let that other guy get your cookie?" And that's what drives poverty and race wars, is because everybody gets pissed at the other person who has nothing when there's somebody up here who's got everything. And that's sort of how it worked in that story as well. God, I wish I could talk about Parasite. The movie's damn good. You have to read subtitles. It's by Bong Joon-ho. It's a South Korean film. But it just won the SAG Award for Best Acting Ensemble, and no foreign film has ever won that. I think it's got some Oscar buzz. It's a good movie. I watched it twice, guys. I want to watch it a third time. I just don't have time yet. I got No Man's Sky I had to farm some minerals and stuff. So y'all have a great weekend. Don't forget to do the quiz that you missed if you missed it. And the new quiz opens this weekend. New quiz over these stories. New discussion post over next week's stories. Warning, those stories are messed up.
So we don't do the discussion post this weekend?
You do a discussion post this weekend over the next stories.
Okay.
Yes.